Chandler, you have a good holiday? You're out that way, right?
I'm currently in Baton Rouge, and I'm going to go to New Orleans in about an hour. So I am counting down the minutes. It's going to be a fun-filled but busy week.
So what's Chandler Rome's call for dinner tonight? I mean, you're going to be there for dinner. So I mean, what's the move?
I may go right off the bat. I may go Parkway Tavern, get a po' boy. That's one of the best po' boys you can get in New Orleans. Go to Parkway. Portugal maybe if I want a burger. But, I'm thinking Parkway tonight.
Parkway is that surf and turf, but I mean, you can't go wrong with really any of them. They do the Thanksgiving po' boy in November. Just that's a very nice call, Chandler. As Alabama hits New Orleans tomorrow morning around 10 a.m., that team charter expected to touch down at Louis Armstrong Airport there in New Orleans. What's the top storyline in your opinion? Is it the offense and the struggles that we saw it have its last time out, or is it this defense that continues to try to work against injury while at the same time sort of replenishing itself with the return of a couple of three linebackers?
I think the offense is a little more unknown right now. I mean, it seems like every week they're talking about the defense and how they're going to respond to injuries. And by now, I mean, I hate to kind of downplay the injuries or who's coming back, but I think by now we know how the defense is going to respond to the injuries. I mean, we've seen them have to do it week in and week out, really since week one against Florida State. So I think the main storyline is Alabama offensive coordinator Brian Dable is going to speak for the first time since August on the 28th. So that's Thursday. So he'll be first one. He's the first, Alabama coach we'll hear from. Nick Saban will speak a little bit when they get off the plane tomorrow. But then the next day, Brian Dable's up there, and I would imagine he's going to face. I wouldn't say he's going to get grilled, but there are some questions to ask as far as what is the identity of this offense, and I think that's a problem right off the bat when you're asking in the college football playoff semifinal press conference, what's the identity of the offense, because we really don't know yet. So I think what Brian Dable has to say on the 28th, that'll be far and away what I really look to as the top storyline early when they get to New Orleans. But I think kind of a subplot is whether there's how much LeBron Ray maybe could get in there and play for Alabama's defense. We talked about the injuries. We saw LeBron Ray get back with the defensive lineman, kind of working still in a black jersey, but to see him, I think 4 or 5 weeks removed from a broken foot, back with drills, he's another body, and that's what that defense needs right now. They need depth. So to see how much LeBron Ray could maybe contribute if he's available this game, that'd be interesting to know, but I'm really, really interested to hear what Brian Dable has to say on the 28th.
With Dylan Moses down now at the inside linebacker position with a foot injury of his own, what's your confidence level, Chandler, in terms of where Mack Wilson really is in his own return from a foot injury? How do you assess that situation right now? You think Keith Holcomb still needs to be ready to go on New Year's night, given the loss of Dylan Moses and still a little bit of uncertainty maybe with Mack Wilson?
It's tough to say with Mack Wilson because, Travis, I mean, when we get in there, I mean, for the open portions of practice, what we see is not indicative of whether somebody's healthy or not. I mean, all I can tell you is that he's been in the full contact jersey and he's going through drills as if nothing's wrong. But that was also maybe a little bit of the case before the Auburn game, and he was obviously limited there. But if you talk to the players and you talk to Nick Saban, they seem to allude to the fact that he's as close to 100% as he's going to get. So if you go by that judgment, then you'd feel better than you would going into the Auburn game, because I don't think anybody was trying to hide the fact that those three guys were not 100% before Auburn. Now you're hearing more and more that they are 100%. Your confidence level's there. And then with Keith Holcomb, his shortcomings are noted, and we've seen that play out on the field this year. He's played some very good football for Alabama, but then there were some stretches in the Mississippi State game where he was obviously kind of in over his head a little bit. But with Keith Holcomb, you've got to like the intangibles. You've got to like the fact that he's played in an SEC championship game, that he's played in a college football playoff semifinal, that he's been here before. The lights aren't going to get to him. He's going to go out there and, he's not going to be fazed by it. So I think to have that in your back pocket is not a bad thing either. But I think we'll know a little bit more when we can actually talk to some of these guys at that big media day on the 30th.
Yeah, I think that's it is a situation that you're going to have to let play out even into on-site preparation, which is something you typically don't see this time of year, but it's kind of where Alabama is at, especially at inside linebacker. I got a true or false for you, Chandler. Something that I kind of felt could have happened or played out this way, but it didn't. True or false? J.K. Scott, Alabama's outstanding punter, should have been a permanent captain for the 2017 Alabama football team. Is that true or false?
I think it's true, and I think J.K. just kind of got bit by just kind of the nature of his position. I think, first of all, it should be said is that Alabama's team votes on the captains. This isn't a coach's thing. This isn't – the members of the team vote. So I think the team would know, who they feel is the captain is probably better than anybody else. But you got to remember with J.K. Scott, J.K.'s not around much in practice. So, these guys can bond with J.K. in the locker room during games and everything, but he's not around every day. He and the specialists kind of go off and do their own thing. They're kind of secluded away from practice. And you look at these other guys that were named captains, and that's nothing against them at all. But I just think that J.K. kind of got bit by, just kind of a product of his position and a product of kind of, I don't want to say it's unfortunate because I think J.K. knows what kind of career he had. And I think J.K. knows, and the whole team knows what kind of impact he had. But I just think maybe if he was around, maybe if he was incorporated a little bit more into practice, and that's no fault of Alabama's, Nick Saban's, that's just kind of how the special teams operate. But I have a feeling if he was around a little bit more and kind of incorporated a little bit more into practice, you'd have seen maybe a little bit bigger of a push, and maybe he even gets team captain vote.
Yeah, I'm actually okay because of what you just said. It is kind of a situation where specialists are isolated on their own a lot. But if you're going to put people's footprints in the cement around Denny Chimes, and this guy's right footprint, captain or no captain, has to be in that cement at some point down the road. Wanted to switch gears, talk some hoops with you. Give me your pre-conference grade for this Alabama men's basketball team, sitting at 8-4, an impressive schedule in terms of who Avery Johnson put in front of this team. But as far as how it actually navigated that schedule, Chandler, give me a letter grade for this Alabama team through that stretch.
I'd go a very, very low B, bordering onto a C, because I think when you looked at it in the preseason, you may have penciled 2 losses in right away. You kind of thought they'd go to New York and split, and they did that. But again, the Minnesota game was under circumstances that few other teams have ever played in. And then you sort of thought that trip to Arizona was not going to go poorly, but you sort of thought that that's a game Alabama, if they would have won, that would have been maybe an upset. But, I look at it right now, and I think they're 2 games behind schedule. You didn't take into account them dropping that UCF game. That's a game that they should have won. That was a real – I don't want to say it was a bad loss because I don't think it'll look like a bad loss at the end of March, but right now it's the game they really could have won, should have won, and needed to win. And then against Texas, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye if they said Alabama would have lost to Texas in Birmingham. But just the way they looked, and it was the first time I think all season you really questioned effort and you questioned preparedness, because John Petty went up to the microphone after and said those 2 things. He said we didn't play hard, we were jogging back in transition, and that's really alarming right now. And they're going to play the number 5 team in the country here in a couple of days. And when you're questioning effort 12 games into the season, then there's a problem there. I'm not ready to push the panic button yet. I think this is too long of a season to sort of overreact to one game. But that game was disconcerting, and the comments afterward were just as disconcerting, talking about a lack of effort. But I think Avery Johnson has to get his rotation set. You can't play 11 guys. You can't play 11 guys every night, and foul trouble notwithstanding. You just can't do that. So I think he's got to.
That was my next question, was the rotation. Or are you surprised that here we are, through the pre-conference schedule, and Avery was on record, I want to say as early as last summer, is saying we got to get this thing down to 7, 8, maybe 9 guys. And as you just said, we're still seeing 11 guys, and we're not seeing them late. I mean, we're seeing a fourth post in the lineup in the first half. I mean, they're going through a lot of guys. Does that surprise you?
I mean, it does, and I think the way Avery right now is handling Braxton Key's return is surprising me. I think when he came out after Mercer and was pretty emphatic in saying he's a reigning SEC all-freshman player, he deserves to start, I didn't follow that logic at all. I mean, and this is no disrespect to Braxton Key.
That was last year.
Been off for about 7-8 weeks, but you look at him right now on the floor, and he's almost a liability. I mean, especially against Texas, he did not look at all in tune. I mean, you can tell that he's got some rust, and they maybe need to ease him back in. But I don't understand the rotation. I don't understand the way he's incorporating Braxton Key back, and I think maybe those two are correlated. The way he's trying to incorporate Braxton Key back, and he's kind of seeing he's giving him empty possessions on both ends of the floor, and he's trying to overcompensate. So these problems are not, end all in the season, disband the program problems. These are problems that can be corrected, but they're going to have to be corrected quickly. And this is not the SEC of 2013, 2014, where you can do this and still eke out wins against bad teams. I mean, I can think of maybe 2 bad teams in the SEC right now. Alabama is going to have to do this against good competition, and it starts, with the number 5 team in the country, Texas A&M, on December 30th.
As we sit here, as we let you go, looking ahead to the start of conference play, do you still consider this Alabama team right now to be a tournament team, an NCAA tournament team come March?
I mean, with the way they scheduled, they set themselves up to be able to absorb this and still, I don't know about be comfortably in, but I think right now, if the season ends today, you have to put them in right now just because of the schedule they've played. But if they continue to play like they did against Texas, then they're going to slip further and further. I think if you ask me right now, I'd say yes, they are, but it's fading fast, and they're going to have to play better. But this is why, I know Avery Johnson sort of beat it over everybody's head in the preseason, but this is why they scheduled the way they did, to where if some of this stuff happens and they came up on a rough spot like they're at now, that their schedule can save them, and they've got some good wins already on the resume, but they're just going to have to get some more in SEC play. And if they keep playing the way they did against Texas, I don't see very many coming to them.